Hello, hello, hello. This is the Eddie and Easy Show. I'm Eddie.
I'm Easy.
And we're about to get into Week 2's playoff, 2014 NFL season's Week 2 playoffs. There were a lot of good games last week. I happened to lead in the picks, 3-1 to 2-2. Easy, right?
Yep.
So I know you're going to do your best to try to rectify that this week. But we have some good games on tap. But we promised a friend of mine and a wonderful friend of them. We've known each other for about 29 years. Name is Ken Stone, who has been on somewhat of a tirade.
I'm sorry, Uncle Kenny. I'm trying to stay out of this.
Who's been on somewhat of a tirade about Detroit losing the game against Dallas. Been questionable calls or non-calls that were made in the game. You know, they picked up the flag and that's and that. I happen to disagree with that particular point of view, not because I got anything against Detroit. It wouldn't have bothered me one bit. Understand this, Stone. It wouldn't have bothered me one bit if Detroit would have won. Wouldn't have bothered me. But based upon the game itself, I'll deal with this. Based upon the team itself, I'll deal with Detroit accordingly. So I promised him I would devote part of this, a segment of the show, of this broadcast, of this podcast, or as Easy said, this podcast, to talking about the game and Detroit Lions as it pertains to the playoff game last week. So I'm going to get right into it. I've spent quite a bit of time, researching it, looking at the thing. We got videos of all the games, and so we have the opportunity to look at the videos of all the playoff games, including the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. And so I want to start with this. I want to start with the macro view of the Lions-Cowboys playoff game. Sometimes we look at a game and we only look at what's going on in the game itself, not what happened before the game or the season or the last half of the season or how we got to this spot in the first place. So, the macro level view of the Lions season. The Lions, whose overall record was, I believe, 11-5, were 5-3 at the halfway mark of the season. After their bye, at the second half of the season, they were 5-3. But if we look at the Lions as a team, not one win in the last 8 games of the season came against a winning team, and they only had one game. They only won one game all season against a team with a winning record. So if we're talking about a team being high caliber, you have to have more than one win against a team with a winning record all season. So the talk of Detroit being, the most talented team by far in the NFL, I heard that somewhere, being by far the most talented team in the NFL. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of talent, but by far the most talented team in the NFL, not so much. So, winning only one game all season against a team with a winning record and winning none in the last 8 in the second half of the season doesn't point to a team that's dominant. And when you get in the playoffs, you have to be dominant, or at least close to it. So, okay. An 0-3 record on the road. In their last 8 games, they had an 0-3 record on the road. Guess what? The Dallas and Detroit Lions game is what? Was on the road. So an 0-3 record in the second half of the season, 0-3 record on the road. What else do we see here? There was an 0-3 record against playoff teams in the second half of the season. So when we look at the Lions-Cowboys playoff game, we're not just looking at what took place in the game itself. We're looking at what caliber of team arrived at the stadium in Dallas in the first place. And I see a team that maybe in a couple of years we'll be talking about them being dominant. But Jim Caldwell had to come in and deal with a whole culture of undisciplined play, a whole culture of his team not playing up to their talent level and not playing up to the expectations. And this year, in my opinion, wasn't all that different. So there you have it. Now, that's the macro level, or the big picture of the Lions as it pertains to the playoff game against Dallas. Now we get into what we call the micro level, what the game within the game, or what happened within the game, all right? So we go to that next thing, all right? The clicker is not working. Okay, here's the micro level view of the Lions season. The reverse penalty pass interference, or what they call face guarding. Said he called it face guarding, etc. Could be characterized as a bad call. I watched it. Part of me says, well, maybe it was face guarding, but let's say it was a bad call. Let's say it was a horrible call. Let's say their explanation for picking up the penalty flag was insufficient. It was a horrible, horrible call. Fine, all right, but that occurred with over 8 minutes left in the game, with Detroit leading at the time. So, but in no way can you explain to me definitively how a team is leading at the time, there's over 8 minutes in the game, and a play just, makes that play is the reason why we lost. Makes no sense. It makes no logical sense. Now, additionally, here's what the no call, reverse call does not mean. Number one, let's say the penalty was called. It only brings Detroit deeper into Dallas's territory. It does not mean a guaranteed field goal or touchdown. By no stretch of the imagination is that a guaranteed field goal or touchdown just because the penalty was accepted or the penalty was called. Detroit would have still had to score. They would have still had to get into the end zone. They would still had to at least get a field goal. We don't know if that would have happened. Okay. Number two, if the penalty was called, it does not mean that, as he did 3 times in the game, Matthew Stafford wouldn't have turned the ball over. Look, Matthew Stafford has had the reputation, let's not fool ourselves, of not showing up in big games. Same reputation Tony Romo had before this season. He didn't show up when the games matter, in the big games in December and in January. Now, Tony Romo, to a certain extent, has shaken that particular stigma when it comes to him. Matt Stafford has yet to do that. He hasn't done it yet. And we live in a quarterback, the NFL is a quarterback-driven league, all right? So, as far as your quarterback goes, believe me, I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Jay Cutler hasn't done me a whole lot of favors lately. So, as good as your quarterback is, that's how far your team is going to go. All right, number 3. If the penalty was called, it does not mean that Detroit's defense, which did play, they played a very good game overall, that doesn't mean they had to give up the go-ahead touchdown to Dallas in crunch time. Let's say the penalty was accepted. And let's say Detroit, didn't get into the end zone or didn't get a field goal. That still doesn't mean Detroit's defense had to give up the go-ahead touchdown. Doesn't mean they had to do that. So all these things had a whole lot more to do with Detroit losing than a flag that was picked up with over 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, with Detroit leading. I have to say this. Detroit was leading at the time. So none of those things make sense to me. All right. So now we go to what I believe are the more relevant reasons that the Lions lost against the Cowboys. Number 1, Stafford had 2 shots with a shade over 2 minutes left at the end to win and didn't get it done. It was about 2 minutes and 10 seconds when they got the ball back after Dallas scored. I mean, during the time after, not right after Dallas scored, but around, after the time Dallas scored. So they get the ball back. He had 2 shots. And what did he do with those 2 shots? He fumbled twice instead. As a matter of fact, on one of those fumbles, Stafford had actually fumbled the ball. What was it? DeMarcus Lawrence, number 90 for the Cowboys, picks the ball up. He recovers the fumble. And then He fumbles the fumble recovery, and Detroit gets the ball right back. What does Matt Stafford do with the ball? Does he get in the end zone? No, they didn't get it in. So all these things are more relevant to why, to why Detroit lost the game to Dallas than a penalty not being called. Number two, the D had a shot to stymie Dallas on 4th and 6 with about 6 minutes left in the game. This is around the time they were going for the go-ahead touchdown. So, what did they do on 4th and 6? The Detroit defense, they allowed the Cowboys to complete a pass for 24 yards for a first down. Makes no sense to me either. Now, number 3, Caldwell had the opportunity on 4th and 1. They were about at midfield after the infamous disappearing penalty flag case. Sounds like an Encyclopedia Brown case. The case of the disappearing penalty flag. But what did he do instead? He punted the football instead. And this is the one thing, Jim Caldwell, I believe, did a great deal this season in adding discipline to the Detroit Lions. I still think too many times they did some stupid things. But he did a great job of adding some discipline to that edge that the Detroit Lions play with. But what he did not add, because Jim Caldwell is so doggone conservative sometimes, he did not add guts. He may have given them discipline, but he did not give them guts. And it showed on that play when he should have went for it on 4th and 1. Now, what do they do after not going for it on 4th and 1? They punt, right? So the punter could have pinned Dallas deep, making the go-ahead drive that much harder. What did the punter do? He shanks the ball 10 yards. He only kicked the ball 10 yards. 10 yards. Setting Dallas up in prime field position. So all these things are a whole lot more relevant to why the Dallas Cowboys lost the game. The Detroit Lions lost the game against the Dallas Cowboys. Much more relevant than the play not being called. There was still enough time in that game. There were still enough opportunities in that game for Detroit to do something if they were going to do something. They did not. All right, the big number, what I call the big number. Keep your eyes on the big number. Big number, 72%. And what does that 72% represent? That 72% represents this. Since 2000, teams that have been +1 in the turnover margin in playoff games have won 72% of the time. Detroit's offense had 3 turnovers. Dallas had none. You win the turnover battle, you win the game. It's as simple as that. So this number has more to do with Detroit losing to the Cowboys in the playoff game than a penalty flag that was not called. Yeah, we can talk about the assistant head of officiating being on Jerry Jones's bus. We can talk about the call that wasn't made on Dez Bryant, unsportsmanlike conduct call that wasn't called on Dez Bryant. But if you look at the game, there were plenty of calls that Dallas should have had that they didn't get either. That's the nature of sports. In basketball, every foul is not called. In baseball, every strike is not called. In football, not every penalty is called. So, as far as I'm concerned, this settles the matter for me. Now, other people may keep talking, but as far as I'm concerned, this settles the matter. So, Brother Ken, I know this may not make you feel any better, but you asked me to devote a segment to it. I have done exactly that because I love you, brother. I love you so much. All right. So now we're going to move on to the teams that are still in the playoffs, if you don't mind. So we come to the teams that are actually still playing. All right. So who will be holding it up when it's all over? The sinister laugh. All right, so the first game. So now Easy comes in because he wanted to stay out of that thing between me and Ken. So now Easy, my partner in crime here, he comes back in so we can actually talk about the fun part of the show, which is the actual games that will be played. So we have Baltimore and New England on tap in the first playoff game of the weekend. We both picked the Baltimore Ravens to win this game. Now, look, as much as I'm crazy about Easy, I didn't pick Baltimore because it's his favorite team. I picked Baltimore because I actually think they're going to win the game. I actually think that this game is set up for them to win. Why did you pick the Baltimore Ravens, other than them being your favorite team, Easy?
I think that with Baltimore's defense and New England's banged up offensive line and banged up backfield, I think that's just going to be a prime opportunity for Baltimore's defense to take over. We've seen with Pittsburgh, even though they had they weren't as banged up as Baltimore.
Yeah.
Even though they had all these backup and free agent running backs, they still had they still had the upper hand,
right?
In the first quarter, but with a banged up line, it's going to be. I think it's going to be overwhelming for the Patriots.
Yeah, I picked the Ravens for a very compelling reason, and it's because I don't see, as you said, I don't see an by the New England Patriots offensive line for that Baltimore Ravens pass rush. Suggs and Dumerville on the end. Nada. I was going to get to him. I was going to forget the big guy now. Nada in the middle, collapsing that pocket. I mean, who's testy because he was out for 4 weeks. And so here's the thing. Yeah,
and so on the end.
Exactly. So here's the thing. We had Haloti Ngata, who was out for not a very good reason, the PED, the performance-enhancing drug suspension for 4 games. But it has the benefit of him being rested because big guys, they wear down as the season goes on. Now they get their big guy back fresh. Okay, a fresh Haloti Ngata against that New England Patriots offensive line. I don't like New England's odds. Also, I think that we talked about how Matt Stafford has the label of not coming up in big games and how Tony Romo kind of, to a certain extent, has shaken that label. Time will tell whether he'll go further in the playoffs, but how he's shaken that label. It's the exact opposite with Joe Flacco. He plays good in the big games. He has 5 straight games now. 5 straight games in the playoff where he has posted an over 100 passer rating. An over 100 passing rate for 5 straight games. I have a feeling it'll be 6 straight games where he posted over. He is that good in the playoffs. As bad as he looks in the regular season sometimes, he is that good in the playoffs. I just think that New England can be run on, and with Forsett and Pierce in the backfield, I think they can make it happen. I do believe the X factor in this game will be Gronkowski because as good as I see the Ravens linebackers being, I don't know how many of them can keep up with Gronk. I mean, he's just that good. I mean, he's in my opinion, the best tight end in the game right now. So I'm still picking Baltimore to win this game because there's just too much going for them, and they love playing on the road. I haven't seen a team in recent history who feeds off the opposing team's fans.
I wonder who could be the leader of that.
Jesus, I haven't seen a team feed off the opposing team's fans like the Ravens do. I mean, the road is like home to them. So, I mean, they minimize greatly home field advantage with whoever they're playing. They minimize the home field advantage of the opposite team greatly when they're on the road because they have that personality. So, I'm picking the Baltimore Ravens. All right. So now we come to the next game, the Carolina Panthers against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, we both picked Seattle in this game. It's not hard to see why. It's just like one of those, well, duh, who are you going to pick? So why don't you give us some insight as to why you picked Seattle other than, well, duh. You can't just say, well, duh. It's got to be something more than that. All right?
Well.
No, not going to work. Give me something else than that. Give me something more than that.
Film of Arizona and Carolina. I think the Arizona did not show up last week.
And unprepared. You could see the quarterback was unprepared in that.
Yeah. I mean, I think even if they had not Lindley, the other backup quarterback, I keep on forgetting his name.
And for some reason, he escapes my mind right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know it's not John Skelton.
No, that's years ago.
But even if the other backup quarterback, I think they might have won because even though Carson Palmer's out,
right.
He had experience in the regular season.
Yeah.
Ryan Lindley, he did not have any experience.
No.
I mean, he just got thrown into a playoff game.
Yeah, against a pretty good Carolina defense.
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen from their defense, they're very stout. They attack very well. Mm-hmm. But I think that everything with the Arizona Cardinals is multiplied with the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
And so I think that Marshawn Lynch is going to, even though they're stout, I don't think that Marshawn Lynch is going to have like a breakout game. But, I mean, he's going to do much, much better than the Cardinals running backs.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that Cam Newton's ready for the Seattle Seahawks secondary. And they're swarming linebackers.
Yeah.
And they're also their pass rush.
Yeah. I mean, it's hostile.
Yeah.
So
they have Russell Wilson. Even though I mean, even though he's only played like 3 years, he's a veteran. Yeah.
You're not gonna catch him sleeping. You're not gonna catch him unprepared.
Yeah. Even it's kind of funny. Cam Newton has played more years than Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson seems more...
Looks like the seasoned veteran over Cam Newton, yeah. I would say so, too. I would. But I think Russell Wilson came into the league with that attitude and persona. He was just... He had that, and that's why, as a third-round draft pick, they had just spent all that money for Matt Flynn. Spent a bunch of money to get Matt Flynn from Green Bay, and then... third-string quarterback, a third-round quarterback comes in, and Pete Carroll said, "Well, I'm sorry, Matt, you're gonna have to sit the bench. I'm going with Russell."
At least he got the money.
Yeah, he got the money, but he didn't get the job. All right, so I would agree. I think that there's the 12th man. Okay, number one. I don't think that Carolina, period, can deal with the 12th man. Most teams can't. I don't think Carolina can. And had, as you said, had Carolina played against the quarterback who had taken over from Carson Palmer, it would have been a much different game last week. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how a 7-9 team is still in the playoffs, but, that's neither here or there.
Oh, the same thing with the Seahawks.
Yeah, but then they went to where? Chicago, and they lost. Yeah, the dream was over. Okay, and I think Carolina's dream will be over this week. You did a great job of breaking it down. I don't have to add too much. All I have to say, 12th man, Russell Wilson, and the Seattle Seahawks defense. Enough said. So now we go to the next game, Dallas versus Green Bay. Now, I had a hard time with this one. I did. I had a hard time. I went back and forth on this. With both Sundays games, I kind of went back and forth on it.
I went back and forth on Baltimore and New England.
Yeah. So I went back and forth on the Dallas and Green Bay game. Dallas has played wonderful on the road this year. They have. I mean, they played better on the road than they have at home. But Green Bay, in so many ways this season, has been, scary. I've watched that team, especially with Aaron Rodgers running the show. And what made me switch to Green Bay, what made me finally say, you know what, I'm going with Green Bay. As good as Dallas is, this is who runs the defense on Dallas?
Rod Marinelli.
Rod Marinelli. Who was he a defensive coordinator for before that?
Bears.
Chicago Bears. And annually, it was like turkey carving, watching Aaron Rodgers play against a Rod Marinelli defense. The Rod Marinelli Tampa 2 defense is predicated upon making sure that the quarterback has to work for everything he gets, and if it's supposed to eliminate the big plays. And for the most part, the Rod Marinelli defense does that. But when you're going up against a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't mind being patient. He has the weapons. He has the ability. I mean, and he has the leadership and the patience to wait. He's a patient quarterback. He'll wait. And I think the Dallas Cowboys defense will make a mistake before Aaron Rodgers does. It can go either way. This game can go either way. I still think that if Dallas is going to win this game, it's going to be more about DeMarco Murray than it's going to be about Tony Romo, because I think that the Green Bay Packers can be run on. Matter of fact, you can do it quite effectively, in my opinion. You can run on the Green Bay Packers.
I think that any team with a 3-4 defense is not going to be as good against a run as a 4-3.
Yeah, and that may be so, but I mean that in recent years you've had 3-4 defenses like the Jets and the Ravens, who have been at the top at stopping the run, and then you have 4-3 defenses, like the Seattle Seahawks and other teams who've been at the top too. So sometimes it's 6 of one and half a dozen or another. Sometimes it's a difference without a distinction. Sometimes, but I'm picking Green Bay because they're at home, and I'm picking Green Bay because of Aaron Rodgers' success against Rod Marinelli defenses. Now, why did you pick Dallas?
I believe that it's going to come down to the offense, and I think that they have enough tools and weapons to go against Green Bay's defense.
Mm-hmm.
Even though DeMarco Murray, I think, like you said, will be a factor.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think he'll be running all over the defense.
Okay.
And also the morale is up. Especially when you have a morale, especially in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You have a better performance from what I've seen when you, like in the steady morale or below.
Yeah.
And so whenever you believe, all your teams will come to you.
Okay. So you're going with Dallas. I'm going with Green Bay. Now, it's going to be kind of cold. Mm-hmm. And the last time these two teams played in Lambeau Field in the playoffs, when Lombardi against Landry.
Oh, yeah.
Lombardi against Landry. The ice, yeah. So this is kind of weird, kind of Twilight Zone weird, okay? So now we have the last game on tap, which pits the Indianapolis Colts, against the Denver Broncos. Once again, I had a hard time going with this. So why don't you start off telling us why are you going with the Broncos over the Indianapolis Colts in this game?
When I saw the film of the Bengals-Colts game, I saw a lot of mental and physical mistakes made by the Indianapolis Colts. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of mistakes, miscommunications, inconsistencies.
And they were at home.
Yeah. And I think that, especially with this Denver team, veterans, even with Daniel Herron, he was explosive. But sometimes, he was explosive, but then he just disappeared.
Okay.
Same thing with the return game. A lot of miscommunications, offensive line. They also used a lot of hard counts. I saw Cincinnati biting, but it started coming back against the Indianapolis.
Yeah, they were jumping off. Yeah.
And I just don't think that they're ready for the Denver Broncos. I think that the Denver Broncos are much more disciplined.
Yeah. Okay. Everything you said, seriously, everything you said, I will say amen to, and I will agree with I do not disagree with one thing you said. But there's something, you remember we were talking about the gut last week? There's something in my gut. Now, let's not make any jokes about how big it looks nowadays. But there's something in my gut that tells me this is a trap game for the Denver Broncos. And here's the reason why. As much and as great as Peyton Manning is, will go down as one of the greatest in the history of football. He, to me, is still one of the worst playoff quarterbacks I've seen. The thing that makes Peyton Manning great is his attention to detail. What does that translate to sometimes in the playoffs when the stakes are high, when the pressure is intense. It turns into you being very tight. And that's what I see with Peyton Manning a lot in playoff games. He comes across very tight. And I will tell you this, and this is in a playoff game, he wouldn't be the Manning I would choose. I would pick Eli over Peyton. Yes, I said it. In a playoff game, I would pick Eli over Peyton because Eli seems to be a whole lot more relaxed in playoff games than his brother does. And that tends to, come back on you. Denver has consistently won this season, even in the second half of the season, where we're looking at, okay, who's going to start making a move to win the division, to position themselves, for home field advantage in playoffs and, getting a first round bye. And they consistently won, but they didn't look like Denver doing it. They won sloppy. And Peyton Manning and sloppy are not two words you see going together a whole lot. Okay, Andrew Luck is a turnover machine. Only Jay Cutler as a quarterback turned the ball over more this season than Andrew Luck did. And as spectacular as Andrew Luck looks at times, the very next play, he can make a very boneheaded and stupid play as well. But something about this game tells me that Andrew Luck is going to come into this game loose. Then Indianapolis Colts are going to walk into this stadium feeling like they don't have anything to lose or anything to prove. And Denver is going to be uptight, waiting to wash out the residue of not playing their best football the second half of the season, even though they kept winning. And I think they're going to be more uptight than the Indianapolis Colts, and that's going to be the difference in the game. Yes, a very high-powered offense the Denver Broncos have, and to me they've gotten even better with the pieces they have in that offense. Yes, they're playing at home at Mile High, a tough place to win come playoff time, but it's happened. And so, yeah, it seems like every statistic would say Denver, Denver, Denver. But my gut says Indy, Indy, Indy. So I'm going with Indy. So we'll see who's right, and we'll see who's wrong. All right, so that does it for right now. Thank you. This was, and this is the Eddie and Easy Show. I'm Eddie.
I'm Easy.
And we say goodbye.